So let's start the process of installing Rust on our Windows computer. In order to set up Rust, we need to install something called Visual Studio. Visual Studio is a text editor from Microsoft, which includes a dependency called the Visual Studio C++ build tools. A dependency is a piece of software that the Rust compiler depends on in order to run. So Visual Studio is a prerequisite. It's a requirement to enable Rust to run. Now, there's a bit of bad news here, and that is that Visual Studio is a bulky, bloated, large piece of software. I think it's over 10 gigabytes in size. And we don't need it for any other reason besides the fact that it installs those required tools that Rust needs. Regardless, I am following the instructions directly from the Rust documentation on how to set up Rust for Windows, and this is the easiest way to get started. If you do not install these tools, you're going to see a message like this one when running the Rust installer itself. It will warn you that you need this prerequisite in order for Rust to run. All right. So to get started, let's head to visualstudio.microsoft.com. And if for some reason the link doesn't work, just go to Google and look up Visual Studio and click on the first link that you see. Now on this page, we're going to look for a download link. There's one right here, but I want to scroll down because here it says download Visual Studio. And if I click to expand this, you're going to see a couple options. And we specifically want the community edition because that is the free version of this software. So let's click that. And that should start the download. And then I'm going to open up my downloads folder, and here's that setup. This file itself is pretty small because it's just the base installer that's then going to download the big, bulky 10 gigabyte editor. So here, I'm just going to click yes to allow the installation. And we're going to click continue on this installer screen. It's going to start fetching the installer. So next, you're going to see this screen. And the most important thing to do here is to check this checkbox right here, the desktop development with C++. This will install the required tools. We don't need to worry about any of these settings here. The defaults are fine. Here you can see that unfortunate 12 gigabyte size. Again, it's the Rust team's design decisions, and we need this. So I'm going to click install. And that is going to start the process of both downloading and installing Visual Studio Community Edition. This process can take a couple of minutes, even more, depending on the speed of your internet connection and the speed of your computer. So I'm going to let this run, and then I'll check back in with you when the process completes on my end. You can also feel free to uncheck this checkbox right here. This one is going to start Visual Studio after the installer completes. We don't need to do that. In fact, we're probably not going to be launching Visual Studio at all throughout the course. Once again, it's just a requirement that we need to proceed with the Rust installer in the next lesson. So here we are at the end of the installation process. We can see that Visual Studio Community 2022 is listed here for me. There's nothing more to do. This means it's successfully installed. We can go ahead and close this installer, and most likely we'll never need to come back to Visual Studio throughout the course. But now we are clear to install Rust, and I'll walk. So with the installation of Visual Studio and the C++ development tools, we are all set to install Rust. So next up, let's head to rust-lang.org. This is the official website of Rust. And here on the first page, we can click Get Started. This will take us to the download page. The web browser should automatically detect the operating system you are on, in our case, Windows. And here, you'll see two options, a 32-bit installer and the 64-bit installer. 1 or 2 lessons ago, we talked about how to find out the version of your Windows operating system. And depending on which one you have, you should click the appropriate installer. So for me, I have a 64-bit version of Windows. So I'm going to download this installer. It shouldn't be too big. And here in my downloads folder, I can launch the installer. It's not going to be anything fancy. It's going to look just like a regular PowerShell window. I can scroll up here to see a bunch of the documentation and introduction. Welcome to Rust. This will download and install the official compiler for the Rust language and the package manager cargo. So this installer will set up everything we need, not just Rust, but a lot of supplementary tools in its ecosystem, such as the cargo package manager. It's also going to install a tool called rustup, which will help with things like updating Rust, uninstalling Rust, utility operations like that. We're going to talk more about all of those additional supplementary tools in later lessons, but for now, we can scroll down. It's just going to tell us the directories where it's going to set up all of these pieces of software, and the default should be fine. So here you can see a couple options. I'm going to select option 1, which is just to proceed with the standard installation directories, things like that, and then just press enter, and that will start the process of downloading and installing Rust. It's all going to happen within your terminal. This one should not be as bad as Visual Studio. And if you successfully installed Visual Studio, you should see this exact prompt on the screen. If you have not set up those build tools that we talked about in the previous lesson, you're going to see a different message that recommends that you do so. So here we are now at the end. Rust is installed now. Great. I'm just going to press the enter key to continue. That should close the installer. And one more thing that I'd like to do is to confirm officially that the installer worked and that the compiler is available. The way we're going to do that is we're going to open up PowerShell, our terminal, and we're going to give the compiler1 instruction a simple command. And all that is going to be is asking the compiler for its version. As long as it gives us back a version number, that means it is installed and successfully giving us a response. So in our PowerShell, we can write rust C in lowercase, that is short for Rust compiler, then a space, then 2 dashes and the word version. As you might guess, this is asking the compiler for its version number. For me, it is 1.81.0. Now, when you're watching this in the future, you're probably going to have a more up-to-date version of Rust. In most pieces of software, as the software updates, the version number goes up, it goes higher. So version 1.82 is more modern than version 1.81, and the same rules apply to the first number. So Rust version 2 is more up-to-date than Rust version 1. If you do not have the same number as me, that's totally fine. As long as you get a successful response from this command, then everything has been installed correctly and we are good to proceed.
For watching the video till the end. Please leave your thoughts below so we can discuss more about the topic. If you'd like to suggest a video that could help the community, feel free to message me on X or Instagram. We also share short videos on Instagram, so make sure to follow us there. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you, and might even create a video based on your suggestion. Thanks again for being part of our community. See you in the next video.